Chapter 6. The two spiders sat atop the tree, watching the village for several hours. Nothing much happened, but they were used to sitting in a single spot and not moving, so they didn't mind. That's what spiders do, after all. They sit in their webs, waiting for prey. Maybe it will be a bee. Maybe it will be a player. A little after midday, Jane spotted something on the horizon. Look, a dust trail. Probably someone on horseback. Not exactly the prospect of relief she wanted, but the best she could do was smile. Someone? You mean players? I wonder if they will be here for trading or if they'll do something worse. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. A few minutes later, the two players were plainly visible to the spiders. Each rode an armoured horse. One player's horse wore iron armour, while the other had diamond armour. Whoa, I've never seen a horse with diamond armour before, Jake said. Me either. The players themselves were also heavily armoured, wearing different components of either diamond or netherite armour. In their free hand, each held an enchanted diamond sword. Whoa, those players are pretty powerful, Jake said. Yeah. Probably just 1 or 2 strikes of those swords and we'd poof for sure. You think they're griefers? I suppose we're about to find out. The players trotted into the village. The first thing they did was slay a villager. Never rack, Jake said. What was that for? The players began to rampage through the village, not necessarily seeking out villager victims, but poofing anyone who got in their way. Hold on, Jake said, squinting his eyes at the players. What are those dark green bubbles around that one player? Must be a status effect of some kind. I've never seen that one before. The players went straight for the large notchmas tree in the centre of town. They equipped enchanted diamond pickaxes and began to hack at all the branches, collecting the valuable ornaments. A few villagers approached at a safe distance and shouted at them. Not our notchmas tree! Take anything you want, but please leave the tree. One of the players turned, equipped a bow, and shot an arrow at the villager. It hit the villager on his arm. He shrieked and skulked away. Wow, those players are awful, Jake said. They certainly don't have the notchmas spirit. Suddenly a bell rang. Its hollow, ominous tone filled the air. What is that? Jake asked. I think it means a pillager raid is coming. Jake and Jane watched as the two players quickly mounted their horses and raced out of the village. They passed almost directly under the tree in which Jake and Jane were perched. Eleanor whispered as they passed. A second later, the driver rushed up. I don't want to be here when that raid shows up, one of the players said. Yeah. Too bad you have a bad omen effect. The other player laughed. Who cares? The pillagers will just destroy this village. Doesn't matter to me. We got what we came for. After the players were past them, Jake quivered with excitement. A raid? Whoa, cool. It's not cool, Jane said, shaking her head at him. The pillagers are going to destroy this entire village. Jake shrugged. Well, none of these villagers like us. Then he realized his words weren't true. Except for that young villager, I hope he survives. A handful of pillagers suddenly appeared from over the horizon, running toward the village, crossbows drawn. They entered the village and began knocking down doors and poofing villagers without mercy. After a few minutes, they left as quickly as they came. Is it over? Jake asked. I mean, it was awful, but it was pretty short. I heard raids come in waves. Jane was right. A few moments later, a second wave of the raid arrived. This time, it was 3 pillagers and a ravager. The ravager barreled toward the snow house, knocking it down. The pillagers, well, they pillaged. Once again, after a few minutes, they all left. Is it over now? Jane shrugged. I don't know. It wasn't over. The third wave of pillagers rushed into the village, destroying and pillaging. As Jake and Jane watched, Jane suddenly shrieked with pain. She became instantly hostile. What happened, sis? Jane turned, vengeance in all 8 of her eyes. Jake followed her gaze. A witch stood on top of a tree next to them. She cackled. Jane fell backwards, rising into the air with a monster roar. You'll have your eyes, my pretties. She reached into her inventory and pulled out a splash potion of poison. She threw it toward the 2 spiders, but they were quick. They avoided the splash potion and climbed down the tree. I'm going to poof you, witch, Jane said, seething with hostility. No, sis, she's too powerful. Remember what you told me yesterday. Jane was raging. She ignored her brother. She waited for the witch to climb down to the ground and then charged at her. The witch laughed. She pulled a splash potion and threw it at Jane. Jake knew this was it. His sister would not survive a direct hit by another splash potion. He was already thinking how he was going to explain all this to his parents. Evan. And then a villager cleric dove in front of the splash potion, absorbing its poison. The witch was shocked by the appearance of the villager, but cackled anyway, triumphant that her poison had found a victim. Bridget 11. But even more surprised were Jane and Jake. Jane became less angry after she realized how close she had come to poofing. The mortally wounded cleric turned and looked at the 2 spiders. He was already beginning to flash red. My son told me you were nice to him today. I've been wrong about your kind. I'm sorry. And then the cleric disappeared in a puff of smoke. Jane and Jake stared in disbelief at the spot where the cleric had been only a moment earlier. Then, Jake noticed the witch arming herself with another potion. The cleric opened an instinctual door. Come on, Jane, let's go. Jane glared at the witch. The witch was nearly ready to throw another splash potion. Jane knew she couldn't let the cleric's sacrifice be in vain, so she suppressed her hostility, turned, and dashed after her brother. The witch scowled at the fleeing spiders for a moment, before turning her rage toward the village.